So things went sideways almost immediately. There's this old unwritten rule in sports that says refereeing is at its best when you do not notice it, right? You aren't really supposed to remember the official's name or think about a pitch side monitor or even care about the video assistant booth. But at this tournament, the officials dramatically stepped out of the shadows. They went from being these invisible arbiters of the game to suddenly becoming the main characters of the biggest sporting event on the planet.
And because of that massive shift, this highly invasive technology actually started creating these bizarre, incredibly visible controversies. I mean, we're talking about millions of people around the globe watching these interventions and becoming genuinely convinced that the greatest tournament on Earth was actually rigged. The video booth didn't just assist the game anymore, it basically commanded the entire narrative.
All right, moving into Section 1, the broken trust machine, trapped by the rules.
The chaos fundamentally started with how the rulebook was designed to interact with a new technology. Because the video booth is restricted to just 4 specific scenarios, it completely eliminates the entire middle ground of human judgment. Think about it. When a referee gets summoned to the pitch side monitor, they're forced into this rigid binary choice. They either have to stand down completely or hand out a devastating, game-changing red card. This restriction basically created a technical trapdoor where referees were forced into uncompromising and often disastrous outcomes that simply didn't match the nuanced, natural flow of the game.
Which brings us to Section 2, microscopic absurdity, microchips versus human eyes.
This rigid, binary system quickly pushed the sport into a dizzy new frontier. Just look at the sheer scale of the chaos we saw. First, you have Lamin Yamal's overlooked handball before Spain's crucial penalty against France, a literal frame-by-frame controversy that decided a ticket to the final. Then you have Norway seeing a perfectly good goal completely wiped out by a push that happened before the ball was even officially in play. And perhaps most devastatingly of all, Croatia's extra-time equalizer getting deleted by a microscopic hair graze detected by a motion sensor inside the match ball. I mean, these interventions changed legendary careers forever, not by brilliant skill, but by absolute technicalities.
And the emotional cost of these technicalities? It's honestly staggering. Just imagine clinical computer-generated lines showing a single toe offside on the very last kick of a match. And this wasn't just any match. This was Iran's historic, tear-inducing goalmouth scramble that would have sent them straight to the knockouts. Nobody could really dispute the pure geometry of the decision, sure, but it's a brutal illustration of how a machine can just strip away pure human joy and reduce an entire nation's pride to a matter of millimeters.
The contradictions really challenged our basic perception of reality. Take the England-Norway quarterfinal, for instance. You have players and fans absolutely furious because they are clearly seeing with their own 2 eyes that the goalkeeper's clearance struck a steel overhead camera cable, completely altering the ball's flight. But the officials? They're pointing to microchip sensor data from the ball that detected no spike, ultimately ruling the goal valid for England. It's a supreme irony, isn't it? A system sensitive enough to detect a strand of hair on a jersey claimed to be totally blind to a massive steel overhead camera cable. It literally forced the world to choose between their own lying eyes and a microchip.
Let's dive into Section 3, conspiracies and political power, when the rules bend.
So beyond the offside toes and the microchips, these technical decisions quickly escalated into massive macro-level controversies. The analysis traces the founding text for all these rigged tournament theories straight back to Argentina's opening match. Get this, the sport's ultimate star went in with a studs-high challenge that pundits universally agreed was a clear-cut sending off. But the referee produced only a yellow card, and the video booth just waved it right through. The icon stayed on the pitch, scored a hat-trick, and spearheaded his team's journey. Opposing nations were so incensed they actually lodged formal complaints, and this specific leniency basically became the blueprint for every single conspiracy theory that followed.
We saw this perceived bias strike again during a super high-stakes match between Argentina and Switzerland. It was just a total chain reaction of disaster. An Argentine defender is mistakenly booked for a really soft foul. The video review intervenes and spots that the Swiss attacker actually simulated the dive. But unable to simply erase the referee's error, the booth utilized this incredibly obscure mistaken identity rule to transfer the card. So the Swiss attacker, who is already on a yellow, gets sent off. A totally dominant Swiss team suddenly collapses, handing the defending champions a massive advantage and essentially throwing pure petrol on that already roaring global fire of rigged tournament theories. To really understand the sheer absurdity of having this forensic microscope in action, just look at the timeline of the Egypt match. At T-minus 20 seconds, a foul occurs nearly 100 yards away at the completely opposite end of the pitch. At T0, Egypt plays some magnificent football and scores this brilliant counterattacking goal to go 2-0 up against the world champions. Then, at T plus 30 seconds, the video booth basically reaches back into the past and pulls the entire goal back because of that distant foul. Egypt eventually loses to a heartbreaking stoppage time winner.
6 million. That's how many people actually signed a petition demanding the champions be disqualified. The contrast in how this technology was applied was just so agonizing for fans. It officially turned the beautiful game into a month-long courtroom drama, heavily debated everywhere, from local pubs to the deepest corners of the internet.
And this all culminated in the ultimate diplomatic incident, proving the controversy went way, way beyond the pitch. We see an American striker receive a straight red card, but then the suspension is miraculously lifted within hours after a powerful head of state publicly intervenes and directly calls the FIFA president. Meanwhile, an English defender makes a very similar challenge and receives a strict, unyielding two-match ban. The message sent to the globe was pretty clear. The rules of the World Cup could be bent, provided the right person made a phone call.
Finally, we reach Section 4, the death of joy, crushing human emotion.
Ultimately, this heavy bureaucracy profoundly changed the very way humanity experiences football. You can see the immense psychological toll perfectly mapped out in the tragedy of the German team. First, a German defender scores a towering header in extra time, just pure elation. Then, the booth steps in and wipes the goal away for the absolute lightest touch on a diving goalkeeper. The exhausted, deadlocked match is dragged to a penalty shootout. And finally, the exact same German defender steps up, launches his spot kick over the bar, and sends his country crashing out. He went from near hero to ultimate scapegoat, and all of it was engineered by a soft, highly subjective video review.
As the analysis so perfectly puts it, the spontaneous eruption is gone, replaced by a delayed, muted, bureaucratic sign-off. You know, the magic of the sport completely relies on that split-second eruption, the billions of fans leaping from their seats the exact moment the ball hits the back of the net. But the reality is that video review has quietly murdered that feeling. Now the ball hits the net and everyone just freezes. We all nervously wait for a referee to touch their earpiece. And it's leading a rapidly growing chorus of voices to demand the system be scrapped entirely, arguing that an occasional human error is a very small price to pay to keep the soul of the sport alive. So as we look ahead to the ultimate stage, where Spain and Argentina will collide for the biggest prize in sports, we really have to ask one final question. Did this technology actually save the World Cup, or did it completely destroy its soul? It's something you really need to consider the next time a referee reaches for that earpiece and the whole stadium holds its breath. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.